Today, the Department of Corrections, the University of Vermont, and the Urban Institute released the initial findings of the Prison Research and Innovation Network, PRIN, here in Vermont. And indeed, this is the first release of initial PRIN findings nationwide, so we're excited to be the first. Vermont is one of 5 states that participated in this 5-year effort to build evidence and spur innovation to make our prisons more humane, safe, and rehabilitative. The goals of the network include understanding prison environments and the safety and well-being of those who live and work there, helping prisons collect data to promote transparency and accountability, and supporting evidence-based changes to improve prisons, such as ensuring safe and humane environments for all. In pursuit of these goals, the project enlisted the input of staff and incarcerated individuals at Southern State Correctional Facility in the research, study design, and the initial review of findings, and will continue to do so toward the development of recommendations for improvements going forward. I personally could not be prouder of our state and our department and our staff who is willing to pursue this effort and evaluate our system and to innovate the new solutions with the goal of making meaningful improvements to the Department of Corrections. This is truly an act of courage. And it says to all who are watching that we care about our future as a state and as a department, and we want to get that right. Until we fully understand the challenges we face, we can't begin to design and implement effective and transformational change. This effort provides us that unique opportunity to understand, to innovate, and to improve. It's worth noting that these results capture the feelings and the pressures, positives and negatives, at a point in time in June of 2020, when we were in the early throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. Since that time, the pandemic has continued to impact all that we do. And we can't talk about these results without considering the context of the pandemic. Unfortunately, we don't have a pre-pandemic version of this study to compare notes to. So as we digest these findings, we know that the pandemic has had an outsized impact on many of the issues detailed herein. In furtherance to the department's abiding commitment to transparency, we've shared these results with our staff, with those in our care and custody, and today we're sharing them with you. From here, we'll move into the next phase of the project and begin innovating. And we look forward to sharing the results of that labor with you in the future. But today we'll focus on discussing our progress to this point. I wanted to take a moment to thank our team at the Department of Corrections for their support and their participation in this project, the incarcerated population at Southern State for their contributions, and to our partners, UVM and the Urban Institute, for courageously collaborating with us on this effort. And with that, I will turn it over to our friends at the Urban Institute. David?
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you all for coming today and for paying such close attention to this important set of issues. As the Commissioner said, the PRIN effort is a 5-state initiative that we developed at the Urban Institute with generous support from Arnold Ventures. And we put out a competitive request for applications about 2 years ago and selected 5 states for the initiative, of which Vermont is one. And the first phase of the project, as the Commissioner noted a moment ago, is the survey that we are all here today to discuss. So the climate survey was administered across all 5 of our sites to both incarcerated people and to those who work in the facilities. And the folks from the University of Vermont will explain in more detail how that worked in just a moment. But from a national perspective, we wanted to develop a survey that we could use across the 5 states to understand prison climate, and that could guide centralized national efforts as well as state-led efforts to innovate within the facilities. And so each site used a participatory action framework, meaning that they developed the questions and understood the data with the consultation of those who are incarcerated and those who work in the facilities to make sure that it was really a grassroots effort to understand what climate was in each of the 5 states. And so after all of those efforts were completed, we now have some initial results from the University of Vermont and from the Vermont DOC that we're excited to understand. And I want to just, before I pass it to the University of Vermont, thank all of you for your efforts to to get to this point during COVID, as Commissioner Demmel mentioned, it is not the ideal time to undertake something of this nature and at this level. And the state of Vermont has shown a real commitment to seeing this project through and to really acting affirmatively and proactively on the results. And so I really applaud them for that and look forward to seeing how things develop. So with that, I'll turn it over to our partners at the University of Vermont to talk a little more about their specific efforts on the survey.
Hi, my name is Kathy Fox. I'm a professor of sociology at UVM and a criminologist. And together with my research partner, Abigail Crocker, Abby, who's a statistician, I'm going to talk for a minute about why we were excited about the project, and then Abby will go into a little bit more depth. We were very excited to be involved in this project because of the fact that it used participatory research methods, and we were able to include the folks who live and work in Southern in our process. And rather than the researchers going in and deciding what's important to study, they informed the research and let us know what was important to study. We are also excited about the fact that the data will be used to drive positive social change, and we used a mixed methods approach. I'm a qualitative researcher. I focus on doing focus groups and interviews, and we use those to consult with people to develop sort of topics of concern, and then created an extensive survey, which is more than 150 questions, and then did the analysis, and at every step shared it with people inside the facility. The other opportunity is that because there are 5 states and there are 5 different facilities, they're all a little bit different and they're doing this a little bit differently. It provides an opportunity for all 5 states' findings to be compared and analyzed together to give us a broader sense of what's going on in corrections departments across the country. And also because we both have a personal commitment to criminal justice reform, we were excited about the project. So our role in the project was to use the data to shine light on correctional environments and to increase our understanding and everyone's understanding about prison conditions and climate, and also to use the data to identify important areas of priority for change that come from the people who experience prisons. And one core element of this is that because it's a multi-year project, and this is our baseline survey, once innovations are implemented, then we will follow up to develop using the survey again and other kinds of participatory methods to try to evaluate the impact of those changes and what works and what doesn't work. The other thing I would just say is that it's been very challenging during the pandemic, and it slowed us down quite a bit because there were times we could go in to the facility and times we couldn't because of various restrictions and outbreaks and things like that. But everybody has sort of soldiered on and persevered. So, and I want to turn it over to my research partner, Abby Crocker, to say a little more.
Great. Thanks, Kathy. I don't know if I'm actually there yet, but I'm going for it. Again, thank you everybody for coming. It's really exciting to see the results of the research get to this point, and really great to see how much interest and engagement is here. I want to highlight that we're really sort of proud of the success we've had so far, in particular around this survey, both the process to develop it as well as the product. So the survey itself is, like Kathy mentioned, there's 2 of them. There's one for incarcerated folks and one for corrections staff, and each one of them is really long. Each one of them has over 100+ questions, and the way we developed it was in partnership with the folks inside, staff and incarcerated people, but also in alignment, like David mentioned, with what's going on in the other states. So we had that nice blend between priority areas in the local context of Vermont, grounded in the voices of those inside the facility, as well as leveraging the opportunity that this national collaboration has. So we're really proud of the product. We also want to highlight that we had a really high response rate. Over 70% of staff and incarcerated folks inside the facility completed these surveys, which is really high. The survey was done, as sort of through this partnership with UVM as the independent researcher. So we really feel like hopefully we were able to establish a high level of trust that not only was there a lot of confidentiality with the information that was submitted, but also that the information we were producing was going into the hands of our partners who really want to do something with it, who are really asking for this information. And as we were developing this survey, I just really want to highlight the partnership with the Department of Corrections in that, a lot of the survey questions are challenging for someone to read and hear. And our partners in the corrections were very transparent the whole time, saying, it's your survey, our survey, but ask the questions that you need to ask. Never trying to change a question or uncomfortable with maybe what a response might be. So that's been a much appreciated pathway for this project. I just also want to highlight some of the big things we've learned from this process, in particular, all the conversations we've had in the facility, the data we've collected, our national partnership really around, the concepts around what needs to change in prisons is complicated. You'll see through the surveys the results that have been shared with you is, there's not like an easy solution. There might be some immediate things that can change to cause some more urgent sort of improvements today, but at the same time, corrections reform is big. Things are interconnected. So this is an opportunity to think sort of inside a facility as well as system wide. And it's also important to remember, why we're doing this. Like, these data represent voices of folks who live this every day. And really, that's an important part for us around this participatory approach, is that's the voice we want out here. And that's really the voice we want to remember in everything we do. And that's why we're really looking forward to the next steps with these findings, is because we see this commitment of prioritizing that voice and doing something with these findings. And we're eager to see what that something is and be partners in that process and really engage in those next steps. We're also really looking forward to collaborating more as the other participating PRIN states come, start putting data out as well. Like, how can we drive this local reform as well as the national reform, and in what role does Vermont play in that? So again, I really appreciate the opportunity and everyone coming here to ask questions about the survey. I'll pass it back.
Thank you so much. Commissioner, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we open it up for questions?
No, I'd just like to highlight one more time the deep thanks that we have for our partners who helped us to pull off this first phase, and we're very excited to start the next phase where we can start to apply some of what we learned.
Excellent. All right, so media at the ready. I am going to call on you in the order that you RSVP'd to me with your questions. So feel free to turn your camera on and definitely turn your microphones on, as I said. And we will start with Christina Gastford from WCAX. Christina.
Hi, can you hear me? Hear me, see me? Okay. So as exciting as this research is, it does definitely paint a pretty grim picture about what's going on in our facilities, if this is a reflection of the feelings amongst other incarcerated individuals and corrections staff in other facilities. But I noticed that in the press release, there was a lot of focus on providing mental health resources, that there already are some in place and being bolstered. But this picture that we're seeing is the survey illustrates the perpetuation of this toxic culture contributing to dissatisfaction and disrespect. I think across the board, it showed that corrections staff and inmates are extremely unhappy. So what does that say about what we need to do to change that toxic environment? Because like I said, as exciting as this research is, it does paint a really stark picture.
Yeah, Christina, thanks very much. That's an excellent question, and I think you hit a lot of things on the head. So there's the mental health component of that that I think we can dig into a little bit, but there's also the general frustrations that I think that the survey highlighted. And there's a few different ways that I think the department's going to tackle that as it relates to our staff. One of those is the staff and staffing issue. And I think about those somewhat separately. Staff being the real human beings of our department. And I think at times the department has gotten away from really focusing on the individual and helping individual staff members. And so my goal as commissioner is to develop new ways that we can humanize the process, that we can demonstrate a commitment by the department in the individual staff members of the department. I think there's a couple of ways we can do that. One is through professional development and really career guidance and career investment on the part of the department. So that means increasing training, creating career roadmaps, and then really investing heavily in performance discussions and professional development discussions to understand how individual staff members view their career, where they want to go, and then answering that question with, here's what the department can do to help you get there. And I think that that'll demonstrate a commitment to our staff and begin to rehumanize the process. I think we also need to focus heavily on staff wellness. We know that being a corrections officer, being a probation parole officer, it's more than just a job. It's more than just a career. It's really a lifestyle. And so the department and the state of Vermont owes it to those individuals on our team to help them with their overall life experience. And so that could be providing financial or retirement planning services. It could be providing mental health, emotional health, physical health services, and any other type of wraparound service that we can provide our staff. And I think the state of Vermont does a good job of this. We need to make sure people have access to those resources. The final thing I think we need to focus on there is training and the development of our staff. Goes kind of back to the professional development piece. And I think those things taken in aggregate will help on the staff side. On the staffing side, we certainly face a staffing situation where we have fewer people than we want and than we need. And so we need to redouble our efforts for recruitment and retention. One of the things the survey pointed out on this morale type question is that there is not great lines of communication. And so that's an area where the department needs to improve and find better ways to create that bidirectional communication through the chain of command at the local level, making sure people understand the what are we doing and why are we doing it. And that's an area that my team is going to focus on very heavily in the year ahead. And then the final thing I think we need to do to really address this problem is to tackle some process improvement, making sure that promotion and merit is based on, that merit is the reason that people get promoted, that it's a fair, transparent, open process. I think that settling process around how we schedule shifts, how we notify people, all of these minor process improvements really have a large effect on the daily experience of our staff. And so those areas are some way that I think we can tackle the staff part of that question. For the incarcerated part, I think this is where we'll really lean into the PRIN initiative and look to the innovations that they're able to come up with. I think that the corrections practice is a bit of a turning point, and PRIN can really be that vehicle for change as we move into the next era of the corrections practice. And so I'm really excited to see some of the innovations that come out of Southern. But I'll certainly open it up to any of my colleagues if they have more to share on that topic.
Kathy, Abby, David, do you have anything you'd like to add? All right. Well, thank you so much, Christina. And if you have any follow-up questions, we can definitely have them after we run through the queue.
Should I just like put my hand up at the end or something? After, okay, I'll just raise my hand after. All right, got it.
Yeah,
thank you.
That'll be great. And I'll make it clear when we're open for those follow-ups.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you. So next we have Sean Robinson from VT Digger.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes,
Cool.
we can.
Thanks so much. I was wondering sort of how or maybe why Southern State was the facility chosen for the study out of all the facilities in Vermont.
Urban and UVM, I think that you would be best poised to answer this question. Thank you, Abby.
You know, when we first applied for this grant specifically a couple of years ago, some of our team members were the same, and we have a new commissioner. So the history was a little bit different. I will say one of the funding requirements as part of this initiative was to have a facility that had at least a 300-person capacity. And so for example, it limited, like Chittenden was not an option. So we were really focused on Southern. The other is Southern has a complex population, and also, a very willing superintendent with Mike Lyon, like really great and supportive of the effort. So seemed like a really nice pilot facility where we could learn a lot that could potentially also benefit the whole state. And I don't know if others have more to add to that, but that's the answer.
Thank you, Abby. Kathy or David, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, thank you. So next up, we have Jen Herringer from WPTZ. Jen? If you're by phone, *6 to unmute. We'll return to you. Jim from the Valley News.
Better now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I had a question about visitation policies. Did the research go into that at all about, this is pre-COVID, but it seems, from my experience, the Vermont DOC made it very difficult for families to visit offenders, particularly in the men's prisons. It was limited to 2 hours a week on a weekend. So I just wondered if that issue came up at all.
I can add a bit to that. And it's a good question because, visitation did come up, and the survey did ask specific questions about visitation. I will also highlight, so the survey actually was administered in June of 2021. And just of note, it's interesting because as we were developing it, we were sort of in the middle of the pandemic. And so the kinds of things that came up, like visitation, wasn't really happening then. And so it wasn't one of the things that people talked about the most. And so while we did ask questions about visitation, and we heard a lot about COVID restrictions in the facility from both staff and incarcerated, it will be interesting to see where visitation sort of rises to the surface in the future iterations of this. But visitation did come up, as well as sort of other COVID implications. We did share this summary survey report with everybody today because this is, the entire survey is really a lot and overwhelming. And what we really wanted to do was take our time to meaningfully engage with the data. So this is the same information we've shared in the facility. And over time, what we'll do is do more with the other data once we can sort of thoughtfully analyze it, put it into context, and share that in various venues. So yes, we have some information on visitation, just maybe not quite as much as we would have if it wasn't during a pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Abby. I know that we are also joined by Eric Blaisdell from the Times-Argus and Tim McQuiston from Vermont Business Magazine. You originally indicated that you didn't have questions, but if you have questions, please ask them now.
Hey, Rachel, it's Tim. Thanks for letting me ask a question. What I sort of following on from Sean's question about why Springfield, and any of the results of this, can they be applied to some of the other facilities? First, that Springfield's the newest facility, I believe, and the populations of the different facilities can be quite different, as Abby mentioned. Springfield has sort of a different profile, and I'm wondering, when you get to the application point of this, can what you found at Springfield be applied to the other facilities in Vermont?
Hey, Tim, it's a great question. So I'll let the actual scientists take the applicability of the study to a broader system, but I think certainly we see trend lines in here that apply across our system, and there are common challenges that are highlighted that we know are being felt by other populations and other facilities. And while it's true that the population at Southern is complex and somewhat unique, the challenges they face aren't necessarily unique. I think that many of the challenges that they highlighted are felt in our facilities across the state. To address your question about whether we could take some of the applications from Southern and apply them other places, I think the PRIN effort will be limited to Southern State. And so they'll do their work down there with the innovation councils and begin to pilot the innovations down there. But as a department, I think then it's incumbent on us to review what is done down there and find ways to scale to the system the really impactful and effective innovations that they're able to come up with. And so that's certainly something that the department will take on once we've given the network its chance to come up with the innovations, and we'll look to find ways to scale that across the system so that we can help improve the entire department.
Thank you, Commissioner. Carolyn from WPTZ. I know that I called out the wrong person from your outlet. So do you have a question?
No, my question was answered, but thank you.
Of course. All right. So if there are no people that I missed, then we can open this up for follow-up questions. Does anyone have any follow-up questions, clarifications, other topics? I see a hand raised. Christina.
It's Christina. Hi, how are you? Okay, so I do have a follow-up question. So there was quite a bit of focus on lack of activities for inmates, which can contribute to reoffenses. I mean, there's one question in here that is particularly kind of disturbing because it says that these inmates feel as though they aren't getting enough activity to then not, or I'm sorry, they learned how to better commit crimes while they were in prison, excuse me. So, and then that also kind of is interwoven into questions about not having enough to do inside the prisons to preoccupy them. So I wonder, and I don't know if this is not necessarily a commissioner question, and it's potentially UVM or the Urban Institute, but what kinds of activities do exist and why are they not necessarily working right now?
I might not be the best person to answer exactly what activities exist. I will say lack of activities in Southern was something that's actually something that's come up throughout the research. Is even like sort of on our first kickoff visit down there before the COVID pandemic, there was a lot of idle time. I know that there is and I'll let the DOC speak about exactly what programs are in there, but I know there's like the community high school, some risk reduction programming and such, but there's not other programs like job training and some of the things mentioned in that survey. And so we did hear a lot about idle time and lack of activities and the impact that has not only on the folks incarcerated in the facility, but also the impact idle time has on the staff working in the facility, and how those two things interconnect. So it's something that came up a lot, and a lot of activities are impacted by COVID, but it wasn't just a COVID kind of thing, we can say.
Thank you, Abby. Jim from the Valley News. I know you have a follow-up question.
Hi. Yes, I was wondering if you had any feedback from inmates on the issue of good time. That can certainly impact the climate inside a facility, and I know Vermont lags behind other states in making good time available to offenders. So did any inmates talk about that?
I can address that. I will say that, I believe one person brought that up, but we were really trying to focus on the culture and climate within the prison as opposed to policies per se, or things that are, legislatively mandated or anything like that, because since the innovations that will exist will be things that people will come up with on the ground that can improve, how the facility runs, good time is a little outside of that purview.
I disagree with you, but thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other follow-up questions?
I just have one quick last one to round it out, but so this is for everyone, but are the findings in this survey concerning? I mean, it's like I said, I'm concerned just looking at it. There's, a majority, it's very overwhelming majority of both staff and inmates are unhappy. So just in general, what's the reception of these findings by the department, by UVM, by the Urban Institute?
Yeah, Christina, I can start. These findings are disturbing. There's absolutely no way around it. I think where we see the positive aspect of this is that the state of Vermont, the department, our partners, we're actually willing to look at the problems that we're facing, diagnose them for real in evidence-based research and finding evidence-based solutions to try to address them. And I think that's what makes this effort unique in Vermont and with the other 4 states that are taking this on. This is a real commitment by the state to try to understand the problems we're facing and then fix them. We're frequently told there's a problem with this, there's a problem with that, but it's often anecdotal. It's somebody pointing to something with an agenda or a certain perspective, but there isn't commitment or time put into really researching the issues and trying to find meaningful solutions that will actually be impactful, that will be transformational. And that's what we're looking for at the Vermont Department of Corrections is how do we best understand our problems, like truly, deeply understand the problem set that exists, and then make the turn into finding those transformational ways to change the situation. And so, yes, the results in this study are absolutely disturbing. They deserve immediate attention on a variety of fronts, and we're committed to that. But the first step was really diagnosing it. And I think we've done a really nice job of that with our partners. And now we're going to make that turn into, now let's go out there and try to start fixing some of these problems.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I can also speak from Urban's perspective, if I may, and say that what we're seeing in Vermont, of course, as Commissioner Demmel mentioned, is concerning, but we started this project a couple of years ago because anecdotally, we see this across the country in every system that we work with. This is not a thing that I think that is at all unique to Vermont. This is a thing that is part of the American criminal justice system, and it needs to be fixed. And what is uplifting is, as Commissioner Demmel said, Vermont's a state that's actually going to systematically understand the specific issues as they exist in this facility and find ways to solve them. And that's what's so exciting about the project. And I look forward to seeing how that works. We don't have findings from the other states yet, but I suspect that we're going to see something pretty similar across the board.
Thank you. That was actually a question I was going to ask. sorry to interrupt.
I just wanted to add too, from like the UVM perspective, that yeah, the results were sad, and I think, you know, reading and hearing stories, oftentimes we were sort of left speechless, and it was a lot for individuals to sort of feel open to provide and share this information, and so what sort of is presented in sort of a nice report is the stories and the voices from those experiencing this every day. And I think what gives us hope is that this information was asked for by the department, because there's a genuine interest in doing something about it. And I think that's sort of what sort of keeps us sort of invested, is, you know, why ask people these questions if you're not going to do anything with the results? And bringing it back to a team of people who say, yeah, okay, we wanted this and we want to do something about it, means that the voices, you know, there's meaning behind what's going to happen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jim, we have a further response to your question. If you could simply restate your question about earned time, Monica Weaver would like to be able to help you out.
Yes, thanks, Monica. No, my question was about whether that you'd had any feedback about good time, and because that can affect the climate in a facility, not only morale, but it gives offenders an incentive to behave better, to take educational classes. You know all those things, but Vermont has lagged behind other states in the use of good time. I know the legislature has danced around this issue and has come up with a few things, but what more is on the table?
Hi, Jim. I just wanted to give you a little bit of update around the earned time policy. And I know you followed a lot of the justice reinvestment legislation. And and because that we did have to change the law in last session, you know, we were a little late in being able to implement it fully the way the legislature intended. But I did want to let you know that at this point, we just did a recent update to the Council of State Government, and about 79% of the people who are incarcerated or on furlough who are eligible to receive earned time are actually receiving earned time. And of those people, they're actually receiving almost the maximum number of days, which is, you know, 7 days off their min or 7 days and 7 days off their max. So from our perspective, the earned time program is really working the way it's intended. And I would hope that over the course of time, and as we sort of re-administer these surveys, there may be some impact that we can associate to earned time and morale. So I hope that answers your question a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, and maybe Monica, you and I can talk later, because I have some examples of where of individual offenders that have talked about how they've sort of fallen through the cracks, and so maybe, but that's something we can talk about later. Thank you.
Sure, you can have Rachel set us up.
Yes, I would be happy to set something up between the two of you. So Jim, please shoot me an email. I know you have mine.
Okay, thank you.
So last call for any follow-up questions, new questions, anything you'd like to ask us. All right, well, hearing none, Commissioner, do you have any final thoughts for this?
No, just wanted to express my thanks to our colleagues in the media for joining us today, asking some really on point, poignant, interesting questions. If there is anything further, we'd be happy to discuss it with you guys, and look forward to working with you on this process.
Thank you, sir. And yes, thank you all so much for joining us. We're available for any other questions you may have. So if you have things that you're like, I should have asked that, just shoot an email to me and we'll make sure that your questions are answered. Thank you again for reading the results, for being part of this process and conveying this message. We're very proud of the work that's been done here. And as people have said, we opened our doors to this. We welcome these findings, as difficult as they are. And we can't solve the problems if we don't know what they are exactly. And so now we have that from an independent third party, and we're looking forward to getting to work. So everyone be well. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.